Good morning, everybody. Everybody is very welcome here today, all our Rare Birds community members and anybody else joining us. Welcome to our June webinar. I want to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land which I'm standing on. I'm on unceded Dharawal land, so I just want to pay respect to the past, present and emerging leaders and acknowledge and give a special welcome to any First Nations people who are present today. Now, look, for anybody who, many guys joining us today are likely familiar with Rare Birds, but for those who aren't, Inspiring Rare Birds is an organisation which exists to advance economic equality through mentoring, education and community. Our mission is to create, support and promote diverse and inclusive workplaces where opportunities in entrepreneurship and leadership exist for everybody. And we do this through the support and the expertise of our incredibly talented and wonderfully generous mentor community. For anybody who might have any questions, please note down in your exit survey that you would like to have a chat with me. I can get in touch, but that's the end of the session. Otherwise, you can always reach out to me in the chat. Feel free to use the chat today to introduce yourselves and discuss the topic or any of the content. You can also ask some questions there, which Fatima will either get to at the end or may address as she gets through her content today. Now, I know you have a lot to cover, so I will very quickly hand over. But thank you so much for being with us today and for sharing your knowledge on such a fantastic and very popular topic. We've got lots of people interested in hearing from you today.
Amazing. Thanks so much for the invitation. Pleasure. I've been a mentee in the Rare Birds community and I appreciated the time that I had with my mentor a few years ago. So yeah, always happy to give back.
Wonderful.
All right, beautiful. Thanks everyone for joining. I may look down a few times because I've got your questions that were submitted before. So we'll definitely be trying to cover some of those off as I go. And also we have some polls to cover off. But yeah, please do send through your questions and comments and feedback. Would absolutely love to share as much as I can about anything that I've got to share with you on this topic. So just quickly, a little bit about myself. So in addition to being the founder and CEO of Agile Management Office, a 7-year-old business, I started my business career about 10 years ago. And it wasn't a really good start. I didn't know what I was doing and effectively just made things up as I went. So one of the questions that was asked by one of the audience members was, what was one of the biggest mistakes when I first started out with AMO and what I would do differently. So I'm going to take you through that in just a moment after this particular introduction. So in addition to running Agile Management Office, which is sort of a small sort of boutique consulting firm, I'm also a volunteer with Beyond Blue and have very passionate about the mental health space and do a lot of work in that space, but also advise corporate advice to universities such as Aarhus University in Denmark. In the last 20 years of working in and around all things project management, I've had the pleasure of working with probably closer to 30 companies now across 16 different countries and 15 industries. So everything from your really small startups all the way through to your multinationals. I'm also the host of the Agile Ideas podcast, and we cover a range of topics around business and entrepreneurship as well. And just from a personal perspective, I've done a lot of scary things in life. Running business has been one of them, but also overcoming a fear of flying is definitely another. So let me tell you a little bit about my journey. So I wanted to be an entrepreneur from as far as I can remember, probably from about 7 years old. I effectively started thinking about business after seeing my parents and all of their journeys around trying to buy products and resell products. I just had a passion for working with customers, finding something and selling something. I didn't know what I was doing. My parents didn't graduate past primary school, so I didn't really have sort of role models in that perspective. They just taught me how to treat people well. So I called myself a wantrepreneur. A wantrepreneur because when I started in business, 10, 11 years ago, I started a business and I thought about selling shoes, and then it was about baby clothes. Then I did events management. Then I moved into trying to do training. I had no idea what I was doing. And this is while maintaining a full-time job. So as a business owner, you don't want to move out of comfort of a full-time job until you've got a little bit of an idea and a safety net around what it is that you're trying to deliver in terms of service to your customers. And for me, for the very first few years of my career, I had absolutely no idea. So to answer the question that came in earlier is, what was one of my biggest mistakes? Well, I didn't have a problem to solve. They say that in business, it's important to think about either solving a problem or doing something better than someone else. And so when I started off my business thinking about, it was very selfish, and it was all about what I wanted to do as opposed to what kind of problems would I solve to help customers. And so that was pretty much the biggest mistake that I'd made early on, not really thinking it through and just jumping in and really probably wasting a lot of time and resources early on. And it was a good thing that I didn't give up my day job immediately. Gave me about 2 or 3 years to really hone in on what I wanted to do and to support customers and think about the problem I was trying to solve. And obviously for my 20 years in project management, it happened to work around the concept of project management, which I'll talk to you a little bit more about. Overall, my whole first few years of business was completely chaotic. I was absolutely unaware of where I wanted to go and what I needed to do. So one of the most important things I would do was to take a step back and actually articulate, what was I good at? What were the things that I was able to do well and maybe do better than some other people? And then I looked at all of the things that I didn't do so well. One of the things I noticed early on in my career in and around project management was that organizations had absolutely chaotic environments when it comes to processes, setting up projects, running projects, bringing large groups of people together with the same objectives of trying to actually deliver change. And so organizations time and time again were effectively building process, bringing in new people. They would rebuild the same process, and they were spending a lot of time wasting energy doing the same things in different ways. So for me, I felt that there was a way to optimize that and improve that. And it was probably about 2016 when I was working in a really large organization, one of the big banks, that I realized that they were having this problem in their business. Now, working in a large corporate business at the time that spends $1 billion on projects is quite a significant amount. Now, you would think by spending that much on projects that they wouldn't be part of the statistics of projects that are failing all around the world. Now, the number sits around 70% on average. Over 70% of projects continue to fail. And when you look at the reasons why, there's varying degrees of reasons why projects fail, but one of the key problems is around communications. So in addition to the challenges we had in and around communications in this particular organization, is they were spending a lot of time doing the same things. In the space that I play in, which is a lot around project management offices, we help organizations to really bring together large communities of project managers, even those that are accidental project managers. And what I found was through the work that I was doing, I was able to help organizations to organize themselves in a bit of a better way so that they weren't running in such a chaotic way. Doing so enabled a lot more structure and a lot more order. Now, thinking about challenges in business, I'm keen to understand from you, what are the biggest challenges you face today, whether you're a business owner or whether you're someone in corporate. I'm curious to hear, what are the current challenges that you most experience? Just going to have a quick look at some of the results that have come through. Okay, beautiful. So thinking about some of the challenges as they're coming through, the challenges we face in business and the challenges we face in corporate are very similar. Now, I know that probably sounds hard to believe, but what I realized when I worked in corporate for so many years and then went into a business, that the problems I was facing in business at the beginning were around structure, around communication, around capacity, around capability, around planning. And these are all attributes of projects. These are all necessary things that you need to know, not only in a business, but also in the work that we do in corporate. So what I find is there was quite a synergy between what I'd learned in big corporate businesses and then now what I've been doing in my business. And so I'm hoping to share some insights for you on how you can create order and structure to support you in running projects. A lot of people probably don't necessarily realize that they are running projects, but I say even planning my wedding 10 years ago was a project. And so I think we don't realize how many projects we do day to day. And it's just amazing to me that the techniques that you use to do those sorts of things are the things you can apply in your business to help move it forward. Just having a look if there's some responses from the polls. I'm guessing they'll just pop up at some point, and I'll just talk you through those as well. So one of the things that I usually like to start with when having a conversation is understanding where people are at in terms of what is project management. And I'm curious, I'd love if you could share in the chat, how many of you are familiar? And I know it may sound like a simple question, but you'll be amazed at how many times I ask someone what project management is, and they often don't really know what it is. And I know that's evident because when I speak to people about what I do and I say, oh, I'm a project management consultant, they just look at me very dazed and confused. So I'm curious, how many of you know what project management is versus maybe those that are here today to learn more about it? Anyone in the chat want to share? Is it yes, you know what it is, or it's new to you? Okay, I'm just going to see if there's any comments coming through. Okay, we'll keep going. So project
Fatimah, you can also, sorry to interrupt, but if you hop into the polls, in the closed polls, you should be able to see everybody's responses there.
Amazing.
Otherwise, I can let you know.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. It's a new system. So yeah, just quickly revisiting that then, just looking at the feedback we got. So we've actually got some interesting, okay, so unclear structure. So unclear structure being probably the highest rated, and then closely followed by lack of roles of responsibility, which is also structural, and lack of process. You'd probably be amazed to know that from all the companies that we've worked with in the last 7 or so years, there's been about 25. And I can tell you that the number one problem, and I'm talking from a startup all the way through to your multinationals, the challenge that they have is around structure. Not having a structure for how ideas are generated that then may become projects versus ideas that are reviewed and then maybe discounted because they're not relevant to the business planning, or maybe they don't meet the customer requirements, or maybe they're not a good idea to begin with. So not having the structure in place to properly assess the ideas that you have to become a project is probably the biggest challenge that most of our clients face. Now, interestingly, people might find this surprising because you think when a company is spending $1 billion on projects, and it's a bit less now since COVID, they're spending that much money on projects, yet they're still doing things that are completely wasteful and inefficient. And it was that particular reason where when I was working in one of the banks, and I'd been there for the 4th time in my sort of 16 years at that point, and I'd come back and I was paid by this bank to do the exact same thing that I did 4 times prior. The same processes, the same structures, the same roles and responsibilities, the same project management models. They had paid me to do the same thing, the same as the previous 3 times. To me, that's a waste of money. And there had to be a better way. And this is why I decided to get into business, to really help initially take the learnings of big business into small business, which I hope to share with you today, but also to help those organizations be better structured and really help them to improve the way that they run projects. So a lot of the time when I talk about project management, I also speak with a lot of departments. Now, whether you're a small business like us, and we've got one person in HR, and we've got a couple of people in marketing, we've got someone that does project management and deliver and sales at the same time, or whether you're a company that has lots of people. When I talk to them about project management, it amazes me just how simple the concept of project management versus operations and how people don't really understand the differences. So because this is the introduction to project management, I really just wanted to tease out for you the difference between project management and operations. I'm just curious, just looking at this on the screen now, as I just go through it, how many of you are familiar with this, or how many of you find this as new information? So I'm keen to know if you could just let me know, is this new or you're familiar with this? So thinking about project management is always temporary. That means it has a definitive start and it has a definitive end. It seems so simple, but that is what just justifies the term of project management. It has a unique output, so we know what we plan to deliver. And then finally, once you've achieved that objective, your project gets closed down. And when we think about project management in comparison to operations, or some companies call it BAU, that involves things that are repetitive, processing invoices, managing your warehouse, running your payroll. They're all operational tasks. They're not projects. Now, if I was going to introduce a new software in my business, then I would need a project to do so. But running payroll would be an operational task. So there's very much a difference between project management and operations. Now, why is this important? Because they both require different types of skill sets, and they also require different types of structure and planning in order to be able to build a business from the ground up, as we have, completely bootstrapped with no funding or investment from anyone, and grow it into a 7-figure business. Now, the only way to do that is by taking the learnings of project management that I've learned in the last 20 years and apply them into my business day to day. And I'll talk you through a few of those as we go as well. So one of the essential elements whenever we talk about project management that they teach you in absolutely every project management training course in the world, I think I've done about 15 different ones in my career, is the fundamentals around what we call the project management triangle, or the iron triangle is another name for it. And project management is around 3 key things. You have scope, you have time, and you have cost. Now, as we know with the triangle, if you alter one side of the triangle, so I alter the scope that I've got to deliver, then I need to increase my cost and my timeline. If I reduce the timeline that I've got to deliver a project, then I have to reduce the scope and also the cost. And if I need to spend more on a project because the money that I have is not enough, then obviously I need to adjust. So every one of those points of the triangle needs to be balanced at all time, with quality at the heart of that. Whenever any of these are varied, it then affects the other parts. So it's really important to make sure that when thinking about projects, you have a scope, a cost, and a time, and all of those 3 things need to be balanced. So when a manager says to me, oh, well, I want to do all of this stuff, well, I'll say, well, you're going to need all of this time and all of these resources, and it's going to cost you this much. And when they say, oh, well, I can only give you $10,000, I'll say, okay, well, you've got to reduce your scope. And one of the challenges we face in corporate and even in sort of mid-sized businesses is a lot of the time when speaking with managers, they just want, and they want us to do everything. And as a business owner, I want to do everything. But my team will say to me, well, if we don't have a certain amount of budget or the right timing, we won't be able to achieve it all. So I have to adjust my scope and also be able to reduce and not focus on having everything all at once. One technique I would use when thinking about your scope for a project, whether it's running a wedding or actually building a warehouse or any project in between, is I like to think of things in 3 ways. What are my must-haves? So these are the things that if I do nothing else, I do these must-have items. Then I have my should-haves. These are the things that if budget or time permits, I will fit in. And then I have my could-haves. The could-haves are almost always disregarded and not done, but they're there because it enables you to take the time to do the thinking about it. So your must-haves, should-haves, and could-haves. And so what you would do is then you would ask your team to focus on the must-haves as a priority. And then when they've got capacity, or if they are, like some of my team, quite efficient, they then can focus on the should-haves as a second priority. That's a really simple way, whether you're working with a manager or with your boss or you're the company owner, to actually sit down and go through that, because then it gives you a little bit of structure. And going back to the poll, one of the lack of structure being a challenge, that's just one simple thing that can really help to prioritize work. I'm curious to see how many of you have heard the term Agile before. I'm very curious because it means different things to different people. And any introduction to project management needs to reference these 2 words, Agile and Waterfall. So yeah, please let me know if you've heard the term Agile or Waterfall before. I'm very curious. So I'm just looking at the chat to see if anything's come through. Okay. So as I'm waiting for some feedback on that, sorry, can see a few. Perfect. Okay, amazing. Good. So it's so interesting to me because Agile can be completely misconstrued and it can mean so many different things. So I think of it as two types of Agile. You've got big A Agile, and that is about processes, methodologies, frameworks. It's all the stuff that you hear when you think about technology or software development life cycles or project management in relation to sort of big business. They usually implement different types of Agile-based frameworks because Agile is not a methodology, but there are frameworks that are based off of the Agile principles. Then you've got the small A Agile. To me, small A Agile is around mindset. It's around adaptability. It's around the soft skills that you need to be adaptable in your workplace. It's about communication, collaboration. It's about all of the mindset related shifts that people need in order to do what we call Agile project management well. Now, a lot of companies, they focus on the big A Agile and methods and frameworks and tools and all that fancy stuff, but they really seldom focus the energy necessary on thinking about small A Agile. So Agile in our business name is about agility. It's about adaptability. It's not about frameworks or methods or tools. Whereas on the other hand, we think about waterfall. So waterfall is probably the first thing I learned about project management 20 years ago. Waterfall simply means exactly what it's sort of demonstrating in the visual there. It's a sequential series of activities, and the typical phases within a project are what you can see on the left-hand side. And it fundamentally is about we initiate a project, we plan it, we execute it, we control it, and we close it. Now, there's lots of variations of that depending on the types of project management methodologies that exist. Now, as a small business, I was fortunate because I knew what they were and I knew the relevance. But if you take nothing else and you don't have the time or energy or even spent any time in project management, just think about this. You want to have a project management lifecycle within your business. We do have one in ours, even though we're 10 people. And it's very fundamentally simple. We need to have initiation, startup, discovery, whatever you want to call it. You have to have something that validates an idea. Because if not, and you're like me, I have 1,000 ideas and my business does not have the resources or the budget to do them all. So you've got to have some sort of idea, ideation, insight, some sort of real opportunity to capture those ideas and then to assess them. The second part of it is around planning. So this is where if you pass that first point of agreeing that it's an idea to progress, you then go into your planning cycle. And the planning cycle can involve a very short planning cycle. It could be longer depending on the type of project. For example, in our small business today, we're looking at introducing a new software product that we're going to use for our team. If I go and introduce that product tomorrow and ask all the team to start using it without taking the time to think about it as a project, I can guarantee you what will happen is my team will be confused and we will not use it effectively. And the same problem that happens in big business that spend millions on software will happen in our business. We will have software, we'll have multiple software all at the same time and we won't use it effectively. And then someone else will bring in another software and then another software, and then we'll blame the tools and we'll say that things aren't working. One of the biggest challenges that I see in a lot of companies, and especially in smaller businesses, is often we want to help bring automation and bring tools to our business to solve problems or streamline. I've got tools in our business that I've been using consistently for over 7 years that I can't live without. A good example of one would be Canva. Canva, I think a lot of people know about. It's absolutely a godsend. But then I think about what I did in my early journey of project management and small business is I think I might have collated an amnesty of all the tools that we were using that I'd signed up for. And I think the list is sitting around 50. Now, as a small business, I don't know about you, but I don't have the headspace to think about how we're going to use 50 different software products, regardless of how amazing they are. And what we found is after we did a little bit of an audit, which I recommend you can do too, is just look at what you get invoiced for example. Go through one of your monthly statements, look at all the products that you're paying for. One, you'd be surprised at some you're paying for and you didn't know. Two, you're probably paying for something that can be doing a part of an activity or process in another software. And three, you maybe didn't treat it like a project. So Maybe your project is just a 1-week project, but at least you can take the time to think about what it is that you're bringing into your business. And project management sort of life cycle like this one helps you to make that step, to think about the series of activities from identifying the idea, planning, implementing, and this is where change management comes in, and then controlling the project, making sure you got those benefits, and then closing. And then it becomes operational. And I can see there was a question in here around what change management model is considered the best and why. What change management principles need to be incorporated into the project for lasting effect? Are there any rough timelines one can expect from creating culture change? So this is kind of a bit of a mixed question, but thank you so much for sharing that, whoever sent that one through. Now, I'm not going to tell you that there is a specific change management model that I would recommend and I'd say is the best. There is lots of change management models out there, and there's some really well-known ones like ADKAR and ProSci, and they're the two of the biggest ones in the world that are used in a lot of bigger companies. Now, if you're like me and you're in a small business, which I presume many of you are, either thinking about a business, in a small business, or maybe you just have an interest in project management, then you're probably going to need to introduce some change management that will be a much more lighter, effective approach for your business. So one of the key things, and just thinking about that question, is what are some of the change management principles? The most essential part of change management that I can stress to you is all about communication. So when we think about project management in general, we need to understand how we're going to create awareness. Now, this is regardless if it's for your team or for your customers. So how are we going to create awareness? When we think about change and communications, which is part of change, we need to think about how we're going to create awareness. Once we've identified that approach, then it's about how do we create interest. So creating interest in either the change we're making within our business, or interest in the project or the product or the service we're delivering for our customers. Either way, we need to figure out, we've got some awareness about our brand or about our team's environment, the way that we're working. We will now create interest. And then we create the space for people to make a decision. So if it's a change within your business and you're trying to get that culture change, you need to have enough time to help people understand what it is you're trying to achieve, create interest in it, which is where I like to introduce and emphasize co-creating and collaborating with your teams for all processes, and even for the things that are not part of their normal remit or their normal department. So even though, for example, I've got people in marketing, I still leverage their skills and insights when we're developing our sales frameworks or processes, because they can bring a different perspective. And it also shows them how everything in our business is interconnected. It's like a full value chain from the beginning all the way through to the end. So then once you've created awareness and interest, and then help someone to make the decision, once they've made the decision to be part of the change, now if this is team members within your organization, it really depends on what they've experienced in terms of culture over the periods of time before the change that you're trying to make. If you're a small, close-knit team, it's probably going to be much faster to make that change. But if we're talking about a larger team or a larger organization, it will take its time, because it doesn't happen as quickly as we want sometimes, because taking the time to go from awareness to interest to decision, which will lead us to action. And that's what I refer to as the AIDA model, the AIDA, which is one of the ones that I like to use most commonly. Why? Because it's simple and it's effective. So continuing on the theme of the project management fundamentals, one of the things that's really important outside of the iron triangle that I mentioned is also a proper way of planning. And the planning enables us to really utilize our resources and our budget as effectively as possible. When I think about project management and life cycles and all of that, I did talk to you about Agile and Waterfall, but if I wanted to give you a little bit of a lens on specific project management methods that exist out there, the most common ones, and these are very well-known ones, is things like Project Management Body of Knowledge, or PMBOK. PRINCE2 is another one that refers to projects in controlled environments and sort of came out of government many years ago. And then you've got all your Agile-based. So you might hear terms like Scrum. SAFe is probably the fastest growing Agile-based method in the world. And then there's lots of others. For a small business, I wouldn't think about any of those. The reason why they were relevant for me is because I spent a lot of time in project management in corporate. But when I think about our business and as a small business, what I would recommend is you think about it from the perspective of creating something that is simple to follow for your business, that is the right size, that everybody in your organization is across. What you want to do as much as possible is reduce complexity. So now I want you to think about a project or an idea you have for a project that you're trying to deliver. And I want to tell you a little bit about something known as a work breakdown structure. Has anyone in the call today, has anyone heard of the term WBS or work breakdown structure? Yes or no? Or is this new? I'm going to presume it's new for quite a lot of people. So just put it into the chat. I'd love to know, because if you know what it is, and I'm not going to go into too much detail. Okay, perfect. So mostly new. That's what I predicted. It is one of the fundamental things we teach in training. And the reason for that is because it's so relevant to small business, and it's so relevant regardless of the size you are. And again, I've taken what's worked in big business, but I've tapered it down to suit small business. So I can tell you from a point of reference that this sort of stuff works. So for those of you that have never heard of this, which seems like the majority, a work breakdown structure effectively enables you to take a big idea, and actually break it down. So I'm going to give you an example. Let's say, just to keep it really simple, that level 1, which is that first purple bar, is the idea of we want to build a house. Most of us in our lifetime either have renovated, or maybe we're building a house, or maybe plan to one day. I certainly have built one, but looking to renovate as well. So let's just say the top activity is build a house. Now, if I said to you, go and build a house, you probably wouldn't know where to start, in fairness, unless it's your space. So when we use a work breakdown structure, what this enables us to do, and I did have the pop-ups, but it doesn't look like they're in there, is after building a house, how do I break that down to the next manageable chunk of work? This helps me to then allocate resources and also allocate timings. So underneath level 1, the next level down would be planning. So planning the house. And then on the right-hand side over on this box, I would say build. So what that means is, if I've taken building a house and I've broken it up into 2, what that means is I can put someone in charge of planning and I could put someone in charge of building. And that's the next level down. So as you can see, I'm starting to take what's quite an overwhelming piece of work and absolutely quite complex in many instances, and I'm starting to break it down further. Now, if I left it at that second level, it's probably still too big. Why? Because I wouldn't be able to properly estimate the project. I probably wouldn't be able to estimate the resources I need, and I probably wouldn't know the timelines very well. I know we all have wishful thinking and hope that a house gets done in 6 months, but it doesn't always work that way. So what I do then with a work breakdown structure is I break it down to the next level. So then when I go to the third level, underneath planning, I now have design, and I'll have selection. So this might be selection of tiles and carpets and doors and all that fun stuff. And I might have layout. So this might be the interior and exterior layout. So you can immediately see that if I break down planning into those 3 things, I can estimate probably much better and more accurately the resources and the budget that I need. And then on the right-hand side under build, I might have frame, fixing, and landscape. Now, you could then easily think about one of those boxes, landscape, for example, and find a resource to do it, work out the estimated time, and get a cost against it. So a work breakdown structure can be used for anything. If I was planning a wedding, I could think about the pre-dinner cocktails. I can think about the actual wedding day, and I could probably think about the honeymoon, and I can spread them out. And then what I do is I break that down into the next level. So it's something that enables us to move forward and break down those activities. So it's a really useful tool that I highly recommend. There's a lot of benefits for project management, which I won't get into. But the key one that I want to say is that it helps you minimize risk in your business. It will help you save time, and it will help you save money along the way as well. It's been so essential for me to be able to help grow this business by learning some of these fundamentals around project management. So we have another quick poll. What level of project management maturity do you have in your team or business today? So is it very new to you, fair level, good level, or do you have experts in your business and therefore are very familiar with it? And I know Bethany's going to keep me honest on time because I'm very passionate about this. We'll probably talk about it for a while, so I apologize. So while that's sort of results coming through, project management in small business will help you professionalize your business. The more efficient you are and more effective you are in running, even if they're micro projects, which could be a week project at a time, it doesn't have to be overwhelming. It'll build team dynamics, because imagine not just telling our teams what to do, but actually giving them an opportunity to follow a flow of activities that they can help define and build together. It can help to empower employees, but also drive collaboration and improve culture, going back to the question that came through earlier, and also helps us maximize efficiency. By having lots of little projects that you have a lens on, you can put people in charge of them, you can put estimates of time in them. There's quite a lot of things that you can do to actually help you to drive project management in your business and make it more efficient. One of the things that came in as a question was how to fit project work amongst BAU tasks or business as usual tasks. For those that are not familiar, business as usual refers to operations or operational tasks, as I mentioned earlier. So what I would do in this instance, it really depends on whether you're talking about it from a big business, medium business perspective, but I presume small business like us, we would generally split our day when we have our collaboration sessions, and we would have a focus sessions on run the business, which is our BAU. And that might be 2-3 hours of discussions and breaking that up across the different departments. Even if you're leading all the departments because you're a small business, you'd have sales, marketing, you might have a conversation around customer service, just a general, what I would call running the business. Then on the other side in the afternoon, we'd spend a lot of team time collaborating on what I call grow the business. And growing the business is where you use project management to actually deliver change. And so anything you want to deliver that's going to drive change, it's effectively done through what I call is growing the business. So that's sort of where I would split our time. Probably I would say maybe about 60-40. So 60% to grow the business and maybe 40% to keep the lights running and the BAU operations. But it will adjust depending on the demand. So when we've got a lot of growth and projects, we probably taper down to just our must-haves. But really having a clear path and making sure you spend time on both is very important. So I can see the response from the poll around maturity. Okay, so some sort of a mid-level, fair to good level of understanding. Okay, that's interesting. And it's probably good because some of these concepts are probably just above the very entry level, which I think will definitely help us. So how do we turn an idea into reality? So thinking about some of the sort of the thinking coming into today, one of the most difficult parts as a small business is really to get to a point where we need to have a process. Don't use the excuse that you're a small business and we're too busy, because I can tell you now, the number one thing that has absolutely helped drive our business to where it is today is process. And process has helped to set structure, going back to the lack of structure we talked about, and set some foundations that really drive the business forward. The process is probably one of the most important parts, and I can't stress to you enough. Now, when we think about process, and I can see questions come in, there are a range of different tools, an absolute range of different tools, and I can go probably for 2 hours talking about the different tools. I can tell you I've tried many of them. I don't have one specifically one that I would recommend. I don't have any affiliation with any tools. One of the ones that I did try for a very small business, there's a couple that I tried, was Zoho and then also Monday.com. Now, Monday.com is very basic and easy to use and really good for beginners. But as you scale your business and you have multiple projects and they roll up into programs or larger portfolios of projects, so if you've got 10, 15 projects going and you need them all to be aligned, it's probably not going to be good for that. But as a starting point, that was one that's really popular that I think is easy to use. That being said, for probably the first 5 years of my business, we did everything in an Excel spreadsheet, and that was completely fine. And I didn't have to spend any additional money. So that's what I would recommend as a starting point. Just get your processes defined and then look at what tools to bring in. Don't confuse yourself with the tools initially. So thinking about turning your ideas into reality. So first of all, focus on the business need. So if in order for us to be successful in our small business, don't make the mistake that I made and think about everything that I want to do. Obviously, there's got to be some passion coming into the business, but it's important for us to think about what is it exactly that we're trying to achieve? What is it that our customers want? And you might not know that straight away. So experiment. That's probably the most thing I did right. I experimented. I tried events. I tried working with small businesses. I tried different tools. I tried different processes. That's all really helped to get to where I am today. Then you've got to involve the right stakeholders at the right time. So going back to one of the other questions was all around what's the best way to manage tasks coming in thick and fast through multiple communication streams, email, SMS, group, individual, WhatsApp, etc. So I can answer this one because I'm going through a really large project at the moment with the company. There's so many staff. So the key thing is, the number one thing is to get agreement at the beginning of the project if you can. And if you're like me and have landed in the middle of the project, just re-establishing an agreement on which tool we're using for what and how we will use it. In our business, we do at the moment almost everything related to projects in Microsoft Teams, which is the tool that I've been using effectively as part of the Microsoft Office suite. And everything to do with projects is in that tool. That includes our chat. The only time we would use WhatsApp, as an example, would be outside of business hours to communicate because a lot of people like myself don't have our notifications on. But what we've agreed as a business, as a team, is we're going to use Microsoft Teams for everything to do with communicating about projects. And what we've done is we've created channels for each project. So if my team want to talk to me about the ABC project or the banana project or the apple project, we go into that channel and everything to do with that communication is in one single place. So from a communication perspective, you agreed up front, you get everybody on the same page and you make sure that you follow it. In terms of managing ideas, again, sounds very simple, but even the big businesses don't do this right. We need a single place to capture those ideas. If it's an Excel spreadsheet, great. If you've got a product like Microsoft Teams and you can create a list in there, great. If you're using a product called SharePoint, great. If you've got Asana, you're using Monday, doesn't matter. The key is everybody has to know that it's one place and everybody needs to be on the same page to use it. Yes, I can see some people are using Slack. That's fine as well. But if you're using Slack and you're using Asana and you're using Xero and you're using Monday and you're using all these different tools, it's going to confuse people. If I can, in a program of work at the moment with 100 people that are part of this project team, they're using a product called Microsoft SharePoint. Everybody is using it, and I've created a little framework for how to use it in this consistent way. What that means is right now, I can not only find information in seconds, but even for projects we did 7 years ago, if you ask any of my team, they will be able to go to the project channel and they will be able to find the documentation in seconds. The reason why my team of less than 10 people can deliver millions of dollars worth of projects with just a few people is simply because we are organized in our information. So we need to reduce the confusion. Absolutely, I agree. Have to reduce the confusion. And also don't let people bring in all their fancy things. So they use this over there and because they used it over there, they're going to bring it in. No, treat it like a little mini project, assess it, even if it's a one-day project, to make sure it's right for you. Collaboration, talked about, absolutely collaborate, co-create. We co-create all processes with customers. We co-create all processes with our teams. It's not me creating a process and just telling everyone about it. That way people are more likely to engage in that process and make that change. Build incrementally the foundations and build feedback in. When I started the business 7 years ago, one of the most essential parts was getting my financials right. By bringing in the right financial expertise and help with the form of some virtual accounting and then bookkeeping, I was able to find $5,000 of money that I'd poorly allocated in the wrong spot that my expertise that I brought in helped. And I went from having once a month conversation to now having full-time bookkeeping and accounting in the business. Then I focused on the next part. And the next part was, okay, for the next 6 months of my business, I focused on people and culture and recruitment. And so if you break up all of the bits of business, sales, marketing, customer service, finance, HR, and you break it up incrementally, you can then maybe use, okay, this month is all about sales. This month is all about marketing, and just build incrementally and continuously improve based on feedback. Communication I've talked about. Time boxing is a technique we use in Agile. So again, your projects might be 1 week or 1 day. I would try to typically say to my team, let's work in 2 or 4 week blocks and give ourselves that fixed time. Because you know what they say, the more time that you have, the more time you will fill, or something along those lines. But effectively, we will fill any time we've got available. But if you restrict it to 2 or 4 weeks, you are more likely to deliver some outcomes because you put a little bit of pressure on. And we all know pressure makes diamonds. That helps you to deliver on time. And then finally, you need to have some sort of audit trail, some sort of control mechanisms so that if you do get audited on your financials, you've got a process to respond to that. If you work with a lot of big businesses like we do, if we do not keep all of our books in order and our ducks lined up, we could get into a lot of trouble. So we need to make sure we've got that in place as well. And absolutely, work expands to fill the time available, 100%. I agree completely. And for a couple of final thoughts. So if you want to start to get organized, these are the things that I've now done a lot better than I did at the beginning. And I put this little sort of 6-step roadmap just to help drive the moving forward. Make sure your vision is clear. I've rewritten our company vision over the last 7 years about 6 times because it didn't resonate. Initially, we thought it was right, then we tested it and we just keep iterating it. Our mission, we know where we're going, but it wasn't clear and my team was not on board. So we reiterated that as well. Then you develop a roadmap. A roadmap doesn't have to be a big scary thing. It could literally be a whiteboard or a piece of paper that just shows exactly like if I was going from here to Queensland, where I'm going to leave, how I'm going to arrive, what stops I'm going to go along the way, and literally just taking that view of what are the steps to get there. Then have a way to identify and track your goals. If you do not have goals for yourself, you won't be holding yourself accountable. And as a business owner, it's very hard to hold ourselves accountable sometimes. And also goals for your team. I realized for a long time I didn't have goals for my team. I had goals for me. So that means my teams probably sometimes were working on things that may not be aligned to our strategy. Then have a framework. This is how we communicate. This is how we talk. This is how we work. This is how we deal with customers. This is how we do finances. Just create like mini playbooks that just explain they're like how-to guides, the how-to guide for this, the how-to guide for that. And then always, and most importantly, make sure that what you're working on in your business is delivering value for your customer. Get feedback regularly, meet with them regularly, and ask them, are we doing okay? That feedback will help you to continue to improve your product and also streamline the way that you work in your business. So some of the key principles I want to leave you with today is around effective decision-making. One of the things that is a big time waster in small business is sometimes we take too long to make decisions. And as one of the famous people I listen to, Mr. Gary Vee, who I love the work that he does, he basically says, make a decision, move on. You might make a mistake. As long as it's not going to sink your business, don't be held back by fear. One thing I've learned with my anxiety journey over the years is that I need to make sure that I don't let fear, which is fake events appearing real, hold me back. And if I did, then I probably wouldn't have done a quarter of what I've done. Because you know what? You'll make mistakes, but at the end of the day, you learn from those, and that's what makes us better. Be adaptable. So yes, you might have a framework, but you might need to adapt it. Make sure that you're flexible in the way that you work, because as a small business, we have a massive advantage over our counterparts because we are small and nimble and we can move at pace. I'm competing with some really large businesses that we've won work where they haven't, and that's because we've been able to be targeted and flexible and adaptable. Build a strong company culture. If your company culture is not strong from the beginning, as you build, that's foundation that's not going to be steady longer term when you add 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people. So you want to get that right from the beginning. You want to make sure you've got the right products and service and the quality is there. Don't rush just because we've got lots of customers. If it means we have to reduce what we can deliver, that's okay. Don't compromise on quality. Keep a schedule for what you're going to deliver and when. If you've got a software product, well, then have a quarterly release cycle where you roll out release updates or improvements. If you are a small business that's based on services, do a quarterly reflection and then use the insights from that to use as improvement in the next quarter. Either way, just continue to adapt, and also think about continuous improvement. And be flexible when you structure yourselves. It's not about rules and frameworks and tools and all the heavy stuff. It's just about driving consistency, collaboration, and also communication, because those are the key things that are going to actually help us drive our business forward. So to leave you today, I will just tell you that we do have some project management beginners workshops that goes into this in a lot more detail and covers a number of modules that you can see on the screen. If you are interested, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm very happy to take any further questions, or I will hand back to Bethany. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Fatima. That was amazing.
Thank you.
Apologies for going a little bit over time, but it was so much going on and everyone's so engaged. I thought I definitely didn't want to stop it.
I apologize. I can talk about this underwater, so it's probably a bit of a problem of mine, but
well, I think that your passion helps make it very engaging. So no, thanks very much. I just want to note for anybody who has to go or who's had to go, yeah, obviously I will send out the recording so you can catch up on any of this stuff that you might miss. So if you are happy to stay around for a little bit of question time still, that's fantastic.
Absolutely. More than happy, please.
Let's just run through the chat.
I think I've got 2 questions left. While if anyone submits any more questions, while I can answer the 2 that I think I didn't answer yet.
Yeah, wonderful.
I'll go through those, and if anyone else has any, please feel free to send it through. And thank you for the feedback. Any feedback is good feedback. So one of the questions was, how do you manage business stress and personal? I can tell you that I faced burnout last year, and that was because I was probably not managing things properly in the way that I was sort of set up. I wasn't set up for success. I realized that I was taking on too much of the work and not actually leveraging or delegating or utilizing my team as effectively as I could. And also I was being too hard on myself and putting the sort of perfectionism traits that I have, which, you know, can work for us, but also can be negative sometimes. I was putting too much pressure on myself, and I also wasn't finding space to get away from business, whether it's, you know, doing some things like hobbies or personal time or time with family and all that sort of stuff. So you need to have a clear distinction between work and personal. And I'm not talking about balance and all that stuff. Like, everyone's balance is different to them. But I think just making sure that you have a clear approach for when you work and not being too hard on yourself. Don't judge yourself too hard. If you make a mistake, move on. I don't let much stress me anymore. And that's helped me significantly. And I think I'm in a much better place this year as a result of that. So that's probably the one that came through that I didn't cover. And then the other one was just around how to maintain focus. So I think the key thing I would say here is I have an annual plan. So literally it could be a spreadsheet or a whiteboard. I've got plenty around. Then I think about it in quarterly blocks, what we're trying to achieve in each quarter. Then I review that each month. So I make sure that the next month is planned out. And then I take that month that I've planned and I look at it weekly, and I've got a calendar reminder that has all of my goals for the quarter inside the calendar in Outlook. So I can open it every single day if I wanted to know what I've got to focus on. And then weekly, I do a review now. I've recently got an assistant and we do a review weekly. And that weekly review enables us to reassess what we need to do for the following week, reflect on the week that's passed. And then every single morning or the night before, I write myself a daily list of what I need to achieve that day. And that becomes my priority. So that's probably how I maintain focus. Yep.
Fatima, there is one question in the Q&A.
Yes.
What does your spreadsheet look like?
Which one? There's plenty. If you can give me a little bit more detail, Danielle, or reach out to me on LinkedIn, I can definitely send you a template or a spreadsheet. That's not a problem.
I think, Fatima, it's probably time to wrap things up. Everybody, you can see Fatima's details up there on the screen. So if there's something that we haven't got to, you can reach out to her directly. And there are a couple of resources as well that they're happy to share over at Agile. So please connect with Fatima, and thank you very much for everybody being a part of today. Is really engaged, and thanks so much, Fatima, for sharing.
Absolutely. A pleasure. Thank you. Happy to connect. Appreciate your time.
Okay. Bye, everybody.